So here we are on Aging in Place is a team sport. And I am honored to have with me today Esther Kane. She is the founder of Aging in Place Directory. And she comes from an occupational therapy background.
Mhm.
And I'm going to let Esther introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her background and how she came to start the Aging in Place directory. Welcome,
Hi,
Esther.
Chris. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am loving it. Ask me anything throughout this interview. I hope I can give some good information for your audience. Yes, I am a retired occupational therapist. I worked for many years in geriatric, mostly head injury geriatrics. And after I retired from that, when I got too old to do that, I moved on to website type of work. Only because at that time I was a senior therapist and I was doing a lot of research, continuing ed classes, that kind of thing, giving them. And I just found the internet to be fascinating. So I went from OT to website design and internet marketing and all of that. And I did that for many, many years. And now that I'm retired in my late 60s, I thought, wouldn't it be great to combine both these skills into a hobby, into a fun project? And that's when I started doing my website, seniorsafetyadvice.com. And that has been running for a few years. And I talk there a lot about, anything having to do with aging and family caregiving and all of those things, everything that I learned as an OT and experienced as an OT. And I started getting a lot of emails from people, from my readers, about, well, you're talking a lot about all these services that are needed, but where are they? How do I find them? And I thought, well, I mean, they're easy to find, they're everywhere. But so I figured that they just were having a hard time maybe using the internet or, weren't sure how to search. So I put a form on my website saying, just tell me where you are and who you're looking for, and I'll give you a list. And they started sending me places across the country and what they were looking for. And lo and behold, I had a very hard time finding these service providers. They were everywhere, one on Facebook, one on LinkedIn, maybe one had a website, maybe one or two on the National Association of Home Builders. I mean, they were scattered everywhere. So I thought, well, this is silly. I mean, there has to be a directory of all of these services. I mean, we all know that it takes a lot of different services in order to complete an aging in place project, or home modification for someone who plans to stay at home for a long time, whether they're aging in place or whether, they have some kind of disability that requires a home modification. Either way, it takes a lot of different hands to do that. And so that's how I started the Aging in Place directory, hoping to put all these disciplines together in one place, not only for the homeowners and their families, but for the aging in place professionals as well, to see who's around them that they can work with together. And that's the story.
Yeah. Well, I love how you put retired in quotes because
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Well,
that it sounds like you're anything but sitting around with your feet up.
yeah.
And I have recently been, giving a lot of thought to the whole idea of retirement
Yeah.
and the idea that you would work for 40 years doing something that you may not even really enjoy. You're just doing it to pay the bills and keep the lights on, and
Right.
then you get to spend a few years at the end of your life doing what you want to do, but really just relaxing and not having any purpose. And I see so many times when people reach that point and that they've been looking forward to all their life, and then all of a sudden they're like, what am I doing? I don't really feel like I'm important anymore. I remember my mother when, she was having a lot of health issues and she was sitting in her chair and she was in tears. She said, I feel like I'm useless
Yeah.
because she wasn't able to, do the things that she had done all of her life and that gave her meaning. And I really am putting a lot of thought and time and effort into communicating the idea that maybe we need to change the whole idea of retirement. Maybe we
Oh,
need to change the whole paradigm of, we retire and then we just relax. And rather than retire, maybe refire, maybe aspire higher, maybe like you said, you have done, is take the elements and the experience that you have achieved in your life, put it together in a different way,
right.
and give the marketplace the advantage of your years of experience. And I think that's amazing and that's great.
Thank
And then the other
you. Well,
point I want to ask you about is the whole idea of a directory, because I've run into the same thing. People often become caregivers suddenly. People
mhm,
often are looking for these services because they have had some kind of traumatic life event. They have
mhm,
not been proactive and thought about and planned ahead and looked for these services before they need them. So they need them often, right now, and they don't know where to find them. And then if they do find them, they don't know who they can trust. I had one of my clients recently ask me to recommend a aging in place contractor in a city 3 hours away. And I can go online and look up people who have the credentials and the licenses to do that work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have integrity and have compassion and have the skills to be able to deal with a client who's going through a medical condition and has a lot of stress already, and they need somebody who's going to come in and assure them that we're going to make it work.
sure. I mean, it's like everybody, not everybody, a lot of people can get an MD degree, but it doesn't mean they're going to be a great doctor or they're going to be empathetic or the best doctor for you. It's the same with any profession. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Credentials are just one piece of the whole picture. But I found it very interesting that this niche itself, which I think is such an amazing niche. I mean, I feel like it's in the beginning stages of evolution. I think someone said it's the second inning of a 9 inning game. Is that
Yeah.
right? 'Cause I'm terrible at sports. All right. So, and I think of it as, we're in the Model T era of evolution of this particular niche. It's been around quite a while, a long time, just to see how all the specialties that are coming together, but no one, I don't feel anyone is putting them together as a team. And I encourage a lot on the webinar, the marketing webinars that I give to the members of the directory. I encourage them to create a team around themselves of all the different possible services that a client could use. Because if they can become the person that they call, then they become invaluable,
Right.
not only to that particular client, but to all the people that that client talks about, their friends, family, and so on. Just like when you find a good carpenter or a good handyman, it's almost impossible to find a good handyman because everyone's already found them and they're using them. They're busy as could be. Trust is there, as you alluded to. Once that trust is there, then you're busier than you could possibly be, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to why I call this aging in place as a team sport, because it does take, to successfully age in place, it takes a number of different pieces.
Hmm.
The housing piece, of course, is what I do, and having
Hmm.
a home that is accessible and safe and fall prevention measures in place and low maintenance and all of those things is clearly important. But then you also have the healthcare piece, you have the financial piece, you have community and social interaction. A lot of times when people who are not necessarily fans of aging in place want to denigrate it, they will talk about isolation, and
Right.
certainly that can be an issue that has to be addressed. And
Right.
where do you find the people that do all those services in your community in in short order? Because like I said, oftentimes people are driven by an emergency situation, by a traumatic change situation, to suddenly decide that they need to find these services. So that's where a directory or a a delivery system where people can easily find those services comes into play.
Right.
And so that is kind of the impetus for you creating this direct.
Yeah. And it's been a fun project, you know. I mean, there's work, I know, but to me it's a hobby. I enjoy the game, you know, of getting it promoted, and, you know, the technical aspects of it, because I've been doing it for so long, are not difficult for me. Just, you know, just the changes that are constantly occurring in the world of internet and search engines and all of that, social media and smartphones. I mean, that is this constant. I never know what's going to happen when I wake up in the morning. And that part is exciting. Gives me a lot of gray hair, but it's exciting and I enjoy it. So yeah, it's good. It's when I speak, you know, we're talking about retirement, when I speak to my friends who are retired, and so many are now, you know, when I ask them, you know, I go out to lunch or do something with them, you know, so what's going on in your life? What's happening? And a lot of times I just get back, oh, nothing, or, well, I just finished reading this book, or I don't know, you know, I'm thinking about shopping here or doing this. And it just seems, like you said, you just, I don't know, it's like this slow dying process. Um, of course, when they ask me the same question, then I go on about all of this, their eyes glaze over because they're like, you know, what are you talking about? And so I do have a hard time finding people who, um, my peeps. I do have trouble finding people that I can talk to about this. So I appreciate the conversation.
Sure. Well, the analogy that I like to use is the fall colors. I live in the mountains of Virginia, and in the fall, all the green leaves turn orange and
Yeah.
yellow and red, and it's very it's a great display of nature's beauty. And
Hmm.
the leaves do that. They put on that glorious show at the end of their life. And so I think that we as human beings also have the potential to put on a glorious show at the end of our life
I love that.
rather than just turn brown, fall off the tree.
I love that analogy. I love it.
And, so that's kind of what I say when I talk to people about the all of the physical and cognitive decline that we have been taught to expect to happen at a certain age. At 60 and at 70 and 80 and 90 and 100, you're supposed to, have this happen and that happen and the other thing happen. But then we see people who choose not to participate.
Right.
And, that just tells us what's possible. And I think that the power of expectation that we can exercise is so much greater than people think about. And the example that I use is Roger Bannister, who ran the 4 minute mile. And there was, before that happened, there was the conventional wisdom was that it was impossible for a human being to run a mile in less than 4 minutes, that it was physically and physiologically impossible. And everybody believed that it was impossible. And then Roger Bannister did it. And almost immediately, I don't know how many, but there were quite a few, 5 or 10 or 15 runners that broke the 4 minute mile barrier right after he did, because he showed that it was possible. And once
Uh-huh.
people saw that it was possible, then it opened the floodgate. And so that to me shows that how much of our limitations are because we believe it's impossible.
Right. The mind is a powerful, powerful tool.
Yeah.
It really is. If you
Yeah.
can change the perspective of that mind, you change your life.
Yeah. Exactly. So, what kinds of professionals have you seen joining your?
Everything from realtors who specialize in senior, not only just senior housing, but in helping seniors to either downsize or to, well, yeah, to downsize. Interior designers who work with seniors because, there's a lot of issues with color and lighting and furniture placement that is involved in aging in place. So designers are very good at that. And then contractors, of course, like yourself, at going in and actually doing the physical changes, changing the vanities and moving walls, widening doorways, flattening thresholds and entryways and exit, getting into the house, getting out of the house, installations of stair lifts, residential elevators. I'm a huge proponent of residential elevators. I live here in Georgia, and it is very difficult to find a single family house in and near the Atlanta area. So I think every house should have a residential elevator. And landscape architects, who figure manipulate the outside so that it's safe. The walkways are safe, and then also raised gardens for individuals. Senior moving companies are also, I think, very important for seniors who are downsizing to a home and then aging in place in that home. Those are the ones that I have so far. Oh, and long-term care insurance. I have one or two of those. And then I'm starting to get a lot of emails now from people who are in anything having to do with getting the money to the projects. It could be anything from grants, first mortgages, whatever, any of those. I would like to get some more, decluttering specialists as well. But I would like to get a few more people who can work with the emotional aspect of it, because I think for a lot of older adults, the block, the reason a lot of people, in my experience, don't do anything until something happens, and then the decision is basically made for them because they don't prepare. Is one, it's emotional. It's emotional to admit you're getting older and you need more assistance or more help. And it's emotional to make changes to your home that you've lived in for decades, probably.
Right.
And then the second factor is financial. How are you going to pay for it? So those two are difficult, but I would like to get some more people to help with the emotional aspect, especially for the family caregivers, because it's the families that are usually trying to urge their senior loved one to, hey, you do need to use a walker, or we do need to put in some grab bars or non-slip flooring or whatever. But yeah, I mean, so many different little pieces, and every single person is different. Every single case that you go into is very different depending on, as you said earlier, the disease process, the degree of the injury, if there was one, the status of the home, the condition of the family, there's all the psychological stuff that goes in there as well. And so the approach, the number of people and the kind of people that you need in that team to help that client or patient is different. It's going to be different each time.
Right.
It's almost like you need a different brochure for everyone you see, right?
Dynamics often are some of the most challenging parts of what
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
The number of times where I get called in and there is the client, and then there are 3 or 4 grown children, and each one of them has a different perspective. One of
Right.
them wants to just hurry up and get done and get back to work. One of them wants to preserve the inheritance and spend as little money as possible so that they can get theirs when mom or dad moves on. One will spend every dime that's available, including their own funds, in order to keep mom or dad happy. And then you're in a place of trying to reconcile and come up with a solution that makes everybody happy. And
Yeah.
I think too, there's a fine line between family members who want to protect older people from themselves and not let them do anything.
Right.
I think it's very important that people have autonomy and self determination throughout the course of their life. Maybe
Yeah.
gardening is where they get their joy and their fulfillment in life.
Yeah.
And so in that circumstance, figuring out a way to we can create accessible gardens for them is the number one priority. Whereas for somebody else, they don't want to go outside. And kitchens is a great example of that. I have people who cooking is their joy and is their expression and is how they find fulfillment and serve their family is getting in the kitchen. And maybe they can't access their kitchen because it's not designed well for their level of mobility. Whereas somebody else they're happy to, I can't get in the kitchen anymore. Somebody else has got to cook.
I know.
Right?
It is. It's very individual. I have a friend who loves cooking and her husband loves gardening. Yeah, I mean, that is the mantra of every occupational therapist is, at least, my training, was modify the environment to the individual. I mean, there are certain things that this individual can and cannot do. Find out what they are, modify it either via tools or just a different way of doing whatever it is they need to do, be it cutting an onion or planting, a plant. Either way, modify it and then find a way to modify the environment so that they can continue doing it. That is occupational therapy right there. And I loved doing it because every single person was different. Every single person had a different need, different desire. And you're so right about the family dynamics. You're walking into whatever's been going on in that family for the last 50, 60 years. I used to call it, or I still do call it, the more so disease. What I always found was that however the person was when they were younger, if they were a very strong individual, very opinionated, very controlling or whatever, then they were only going to be more so later on. And it's going to present as being stubborn or difficult or whatever. And the family has to deal with that and learn how to work with that senior loved one on top of, as you said, working with the desires and wants of each of their siblings. You really end up becoming a mediator at the end of the day, and to advocate for your client, if you can possibly do that. It's
Right.
difficult. Yeah, it is very difficult. It is. And unfortunately, those situations usually end up with having to do something, quickly because something happened because they weren't proactive. Everybody has free will.
Yeah, exactly. I like to elaborate just a little bit on the role of the OT and the role of the contractor. Um, Oftentimes, a contractor will go in and see the house. Okay, we have there's a number of checklists that are available for aging in place, and you go down through and say, okay, we should have wide doorways, we should have a zero-step entry, we should have an accessible bathroom, we should have bright glare-free lighting, we should have grab bars or handholds in all these places, we should, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's good as far as it goes. But as a contractor, I'm not trained in the person, in their range of motion, in their, the progression. I mean, if they have a progressive condition, what the progression of that is likely to look like. OTs typically are not trained in the details of how to make a door wider in a bearing wall,
Right.
what's involved in, moving the plumbing fixtures around in the bathroom. Wow, it'd be better if we put them over here, but what does that entail?
Right.
So I have found that cooperation, by getting both of those points of view together and collaborate and talk about all those things, it produces the best solution for the customer. And one of the models that I've seen that I really like, it talks about three intersecting circles: the person, the place, and the support network. And so what are those three factors look like in this particular scenario? And at the intersection of those three, we find a solution that works for that individual. So, and I think that's one of the reasons that the industry is disjointed, if you will, and that it's so hard to put all the pieces together, because in order to do it well, you have to have a custom approach. You have to have
Yeah.
considering the needs of the person you're talking to across the kitchen table, and then crafting a solution that works for their situation. And the mass market, the big companies, the ones that are national brands, like to have things that can be
Standardized.
standardized. Thank you. that can be put into a formula, A, B, and C, and you plug it in and it works. And a lot of the A, B, C, plug it in and it works kinds of things in aging in place, I've found are not very good solutions. So
Right.
walk-in tub is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Walk-in tubs are marketed very heavily, and the messaging is if you get a walk-in tub installed in your house, all your problems are over. And that's far from the truth.
Right.
And the medical alert systems is another one that both of those things, in my opinion, are less than effective solutions for a large number of people. But yet, those are the ones people have heard of.
Right. Well, they have good marketing, like anything. If you have good marketing, you can sell pretty much anything to anybody. You have that. But I agree with you. And that's why I think it's so important to have that occupational therapy kind of thinking, because as an OT, nothing is standardized. When you walk into a patient's room or a client's house, the treatment method, the treatment plan for that person is 100% customized. It has to be, because that person in front of you is different than the last person you saw. Even they may even have the same diagnosis or live in the same type of home. It doesn't matter. There are so many different factors in each individual one. And that's why I like the idea of having a team around you, because you never know who you're going to use. It's interesting. I was speaking with someone yesterday and they were asking me that same question about, can this be standardized? Because they were looking at this niche as like, how can I make a business out of this? How can I make it as easy as possible? And that was my response to him. I said, you can't standardize it because people are not standardized. Every individual is very, very different, and they may have similar, mobility issues, but their house may be different. Their family may be different. Their social circumstances may be different. And the training of an occupational therapist, even a physical therapist to some degree, can see what the progression of the illness or just depending on their experience, can see the progression of it and can see 10, 20 steps ahead of, yeah, we can put a grab bar here. That'll help them. But eventually, I think they may end up needing one here. So let's go ahead and do that kind of thing. But you're right. OTs are not trained in construction, in weight bearing, load bearing walls. And we're not trained in that. That's not our thing. In fact, when I took the CAPS course, I wanted to take that as like a refresher type of thing. And the CAPS course that I took was from an occupational therapist who was teaching it. And the other members in the course themselves were not healthcare providers. They were all different, service industries. And when it got to the point in one discussion, one of the days, we got to talking about, I can't remember if it was dementia or stroke, but we got to talking about that. Now, she and I, the instructor and I, were discussing that because we had that experience. And then the other members of the group, of the class, you could see the look on their eyes. And then the comments were like, well, wait a minute. I'm going in to make an assessment. How am I going to know what this stroke patient needs? How am I going to know what this person with dementia? Do I need to know all of that too in order to go in and make an assessment? And that was a clear indication of the fact that, yeah, you need someone with you to help you see those types of things that no course is going to be able to teach you that until you actually do the work with these kinds of patients.
Right.
As a construction person, if you're dealing with people who have dementia and you've done that for 10 years, you probably have, I'm sure you would have more experience than someone who is just coming in to just start doing it,
Yeah.
because you've seen it, you've done it. I had a patient years ago when I was an OT, and we were walking he had a long hallway in his home, and there were light window, sun windows,
Skylights.
skylights. Thank you. There were skylights throughout the hallway, and it cast a shadow on the floor. And he was constantly pushing me off to the side because to him, that wasn't a shadow, it was a hole. And he mentioned, he goes, I have to have my wife call somebody to fix these holes. They weren't holes at all, but that's how he saw them.
Right.
So then we had to put shades on those skylights because otherwise he would end up veering off and losing his balance and falling. Little things like that.
Yeah. Well, as you probably recall, there's a segment in CAPS where it talks about terminology, and there's a list of construction terms, and then there's a list of medical terms, and you go back and forth and say, which of these terms do you not understand? And terminology is one thing. Understanding and experience is something
Right.
completely different. I mean, I can learn the terminology and you know understand what ADLs are, but that doesn't mean that I have the training to know how to apply that knowledge in a way that produces the greatest benefit for the
Right.
client.
And even if you had that training in working with somebody that had a stroke, and let's say you work with them on a sock aid, this is how you put the sock on this tool, and this is how you pull it up to put the sock on, that you have that training. But then when you go in to see a patient that is, maybe paralyzed on one side and they can only use one hand, how do you alter that sock aid to work for that patient?
Right.
So it's a lot of work that's done right there on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be creative, you have to be a little inventive. But as a construction worker, you probably do the exact same thing.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah,
especially in remodeling, when
yeah,
we're building a new house, we're starting from scratch, and we can put in the foundation in a way that makes the rest of it go easier. But when we're remodeling, a lot of times, we open up a wall and we find things inside the wall that we weren't anticipating.
yep,
And then if the existing house is out of level, out of plumb, out of square, then we
yep.
have to incorporate the new work in such a way that it not only is right, but it looks good and it doesn't make the rest of the house seem out of phase. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the middle of a kitchen remodel, and of course, my contractor gave me a price, and she goes, "Well, we never know." I said, "I know, I know. As soon as the hammer hits the wall, then you find out what's behind that wall." And, sure enough, they found a supporting beam that didn't go all the way it was supposed to. There's a pipe where there wasn't supposed to be a pipe. The electrical, I don't even know what was going on with the electrical. It's supposed to be a yellow wire, it's a white wire, whatever. And
yeah,
you have to anticipate that because one, you didn't build the house. Who
right,
knows how the code has changed since the house
right,
was built? And yeah, you never know until the hammer hits the wall what's going to happen.
yeah. So Esther, talk about the marketing aspect. I know that have a lot of experience in online and digital marketing, and those of us in the construction industry, there's lots of contractors who take great pride in all my work comes from word of mouth and comes from referrals, and I've never advertised and I've never done any marketing. I don't need to because my reputation speaks for itself. And certainly referrals are um, golden, and
Yeah.
having someone who comes to you because someone that you've done work for has told them about the experience. But it's fickle. I mean, there are times when you have more referrals coming in the door than you can keep up with, and then there are other times when they just don't aren't coming in right now. And that's part of part of the journey. If you reach a point, you're trying to grow, you're trying to scale your business, you reach a point where you really need some more consistency.
Yeah.
And for me, the whole digital online marketing landscape, the more I learn about it, the more confused I get. I mean, there's so many moving parts, there's so many
Yeah.
things to consider, and the landscape changes constantly. When you do figure something out, then it's obsolete by the next day or the next hour.
Yeah.
And so give us some insight or some wisdom into how a provider, whether it be a contractor, whether it be a designer, whether it be maybe an OT that's going into a consulting type of practice. Um, where do you start? How do you educate yourself? And again, who do you trust? I mean, there's marketing people. I
Yeah.
get inundated with people who want to do my marketing for me,
Yeah.
and when you don't really quite understand how it all works, how do you make that decision? How do you know? Because until you give them a try, you don't know if it's going to work or not. Um, Think of
Right.
that.
And you're five or $10,000 short now because you've had to pay them. Right. It's a lot of money. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of scammers out there when it comes to internet marketing. That's why I was so proud of the fact that, I had my internet marketing business for 25 years. And I was so proud of the fact that so many of my clients were with me well over 20 years. I mean, a few of them left, but then they ended up coming back because they were promised this and that by the other people. And I'd be like, yeah, there's no promise on the internet. We can try. Anyway, I was very proud of that fact. But I tell everyone, one, you have to have some kind of a online business card promotion thing, whether it's a website or, I mean, I prefer a website, but you could have a Facebook page or a lot of exposure on Pinterest or LinkedIn as well. But you have to have something for people to go to and just to see who you are. Google business reviews used to be the the golden whatever to have your business on. And now that's even kind of fading. A lot of things on Google are kind of fading because of AI. That's why I think it's important to, one, have a LinkedIn profile, which I think has been one of the best tools for me. Facebook is okay. Facebook is more for crafty kind of people, or I don't know. I don't know. But if you're going after businesses that have families, of course, LinkedIn, I think, is one of the easiest places to showcase your business. But I do prefer a website. But beyond that, because there are so many different social media companies out there, I mean, programs out there, it's important to start with one. Choose Pinterest, choose the Facebook or LinkedIn, or I don't know much about TikTok. I don't really use that. Instagram, YouTube. Choose one and then focus on that. And what I always told my clients was, what is the one thing that brings you the most revenue? What is the one service or product that you provide that has the highest return on investment? And begin marketing that, begin talking about that. So if tub cutouts, let's say, happen to be something that, is the easiest for you to do and the least costly, you can do it in a day, anything, it's a busy day here, anything like that, then I would say write 20, 30, 40 articles all about tub cutouts. Do your YouTube video or whatever other social media program you have and build it all on that one article that you wrote. Every time you write an article, expand it to a social media, little notes or shorts or photos on Pinterest, if you choose Pinterest, anything like that. That way you're not having to reinvent the wheel all the time. And then after you've done 20, 30, 40, however many questions there are about that one topic, then move on to the next one. That's the easiest way to build that authority in that specific niche, because then you become the tub cutout guy.
So what I'm hearing you say is you're providing value, you're providing information, you're providing context rather than trying to advertise your services.
Oh, yeah. The reason people go on the internet is for information. They rarely go there to find a service. It's not like it used to be with yellow pages. They go for information first. That's the first step. They start kicking the tires of what do they need to know. And then they start looking for the service. So years ago, before the internet, people were selling. Marketing was about selling, billboards, benches, bus benches, flyers. Everything was about selling because you're pushing your services onto people or product or whatever. But with the internet, it's the opposite. With the internet, you have to be found in front of people that are already looking for whatever it is that you have to offer. So you want to answer their questions. You want to become the person that they trust. On average, it's 11 hours of exposure to someone and 7 points of contact. So that means it's a total of 11 hours of them seeing your name, in different places. They'll see it on a website, or they'll see it on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. They'll see it over and over and over again. And then they need to see that and maybe to sign up for your email list, maybe speak to you, I don't know, but 7 points of contact and 11 hours of exposure. That's a lot. On the internet, that's a lot. So it requires a good amount of time. I used to tell all my clients that were just starting any work on the internet or advertising on the internet is that give it 2-3 years. That's the average amount of time that it takes for a brand new business online to take off. So be persistent and just be consistent as well. Whatever it is that you publish it consistently. If it's every Monday you put out a new article, make it every Monday. If every Friday you put out a new podcast, make it every Friday. Be consistent. The beauty of the internet is that you can do things ahead of time. You can schedule them. So you can go on a month-long vacation to Europe or wherever, and it could still be working for you. I mean, never have so many, in my experience, I don't know about you, but never have so many people, I think, been able to do so much with so little. You don't have to hire professionals to help you. You can, of course, but I also think that when it comes to marketing for any business should know the process, because that way the chances of you getting taken by someone who's untrustworthy, that it decreases those chances, because then you understand the process of what's actually involved. I mean, if you're aware of how to make an image for an article, and you know that it can take anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes, and then you go to a graphic designer or an internet marketer and they tell you, oh no, it's going to take an hour to make that image, then you know to walk away.
Yeah.
But you have to know that process. So in the directory for the members, that's why I do the marketing webinars, not only to let them know what's involved, but also to give them the tools if they themselves want to do it, or they want their team to learn how to do it. Yeah. So
I see there a parallel between a business owner talking to a marketing company and a homeowner talking to a contractor.
Sure.
Because you
Absolutely.
got to have that trust. You got to have, because you're opening up your home or your business to this person that tells you they can do this, they can do that, they can do the other. And I think in many ways, remodeling somebody's home requires a level of trust that's almost higher than anything, because we're asking you, let us come in your home. Okay, we're gonna tear it apart.
Yeah.
If we do the wrong thing or cut the wrong wire or cut the plumbing, the potential for huge liability is there, and we want you to trust us enough that you're going to pay us a big pile of money to come in and do all this, in the belief that when we get done, that it's going to be way better than it was when you started. And not only is it going to be way better when we're done, that the process is not going to be so horrendous that you're going to completely lose your mind while we're in your house, working on it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There is a huge level of trust.
Yeah.
But as we both know, there are people who are very good at gaining that trust without having anything, to back it up. There are people who can persuade you to do just about anything, and
Right.
that's their skill. Yeah.
That's why
right,
it's important that you're good at whatever it is you do.
Yeah.
Before you become a marketer. If you're a good marketer, but you're a terrible carpenter or a terrible OT or a terrible, Uber driver or whatever it is, all you're going to do is show the world how terrible you are.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get a lot of customers because you're a good marketer. But, the other side of the coin is somebody who's really good at what they do, but they're not good at telling the story. They're not good at communicating the value of what they're offering. And, I see that a lot in the contracting world, because people come to me and they say, well, we got this quote from, Chuck in a truck over here who is a third of your price. Why is that? And, it's because I have 40 years of experience. I
Right.
take your comfort and the experience that you have while I'm remodeling your home very seriously. We put up dust protection. We use HEPA air filters. We make it a very strong effort to protect the other parts of your home. We communicate to you what we're going to do. We use the highest quality materials and labor and products, and we offer a 5-year warranty. And all of those are things that are not necessarily obvious without being explained.
Right.
And that level of service, that level of care, um, is is why our prices are higher than a lot of people. But it's not a commodity. People say how much does a new house cost per square foot? Well, it depends on the house. Depends on what goes into the house. It depends on the amount of care and the amount of craftsmanship that go into that. And it's kind of like asking how much is a new car per pound.
Right. Right. But for
It
some
depends on the
people, all they can see are the dollar signs.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And then do you really want, I mean, is that a good client for you? I don't know, right? Yeah, business is interesting. I'm not going to say that I'm a genius at business, but I definitely am very empathetic to what the client needs. And I do everything I can to make it right for them. I mean, as an internet marketer, I am responsible for these people's businesses and
Yeah,
livelihood to a large degree. So it's up to me to make sure that those websites and the social media marketing is working for them. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to have retired from that. The responsibility was high. So I'm glad to let that go. Now I can just do it for myself, and it's a lot better. I can breathe
yeah.
a little easier.
I,
But
I,
it's a very, very important to be creative. Another thing I will say about marketing, and I don't mean to interrupt, but another thing is to be very attuned or intuned. Well, whatever. To be attuned about what is going on in the world. Years ago, I had a client who's a divorce attorney down in Florida. And I always like to read up on, I mean, I had clients who did everything, plumbing and attorney and landscape. And I mean, just everything, services I never even heard of. But anyway, this one client was a divorce attorney. And I like to read up on what is going on in that industry just to help me identify what problems people are looking for, and then create the content to help them with that problem. So I found that there were a lot of people looking for, especially in his physical area, looking for divorce attorneys to help men with child custody. Because at the time, years ago, a lot of child custody was automatically given to women, to the mothers. But these were fathers now looking for that. They wanted the child custody, not the mother. And there wasn't much, the laws had just started changing in their favor. So I told that to my client, and he thought about it, and he decided to open up a little division, department, whatever, in his law firm. There were only like 4 people in his law firm. So he assigned one guy to do that. And 3 years later, they became the father's rights attorney in Florida. So they are the ones that men go to in order to get that. Now, he hadn't thought of that. It hadn't come to his radar, but that's part of internet marketing, is looking for trends. What's happening, what's going on, what are people searching for? And can you then start providing that information, talking about it? And hopefully, if it becomes, a big, it's almost like investing in a stock. You hope that the stock does well, but it doesn't cost anything to have some articles on the website. You're renting the same amount of space, and you just put that information out there, and ta-da.
right.
So just little things like that happened with a plumber
Well,
that I.
it's a great point, not only with regards to marketing, but with regards to business creation, period.
Mm-hmm,
In
mm-hmm,
that, we often go to market with something that we are interested in, that
mm-hmm,
we find fascinating.
mm-hmm.
But, if the marketplace isn't interested in it, it's not going to be a very successful business. the market research and taking the time to find out, what is a big group of people with a big problem that needs to be solved, and then figuring out a solution to that problem and bringing that solution to the marketplace, we're probably going to be doing way better than if we just simply said, well, I'm interested in this, so I'm going to start a business about
Right.
it. If
Right.
nobody else is interested in it, we're going to have a tough time.
Right, exactly. So it means being open to, and being aware, which means keeping up. I know, but that's part of business, right? Keeping up
Right.
with trends. There's a great website called trendhunter.com. And I like going there once a month or so because it's all about these new inventions and ideas that people have. I mean, some of them are completely wacky and crazy, but it's fascinating to see, number one, how people's minds work, what they're creating, what they're doing. And once in a while, you get a great idea about, wow, now that would work really well. Not that it necessarily has to be that product, but it gives you an idea of how the market trend is going. I think it's very important to keep up with all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you more important than, chuck in the truck. I like that, chuck in the
Yeah.
truck.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, Esther, it's been a privilege, and I really
I
really
know.
enjoy the dialogue. So tell people how they can find you if they want more information.
Sure. They can go to seniorsafetyadvice.com, or they can go to aginginplacedirectory.com. I am actively working on both of those. I have 5 other websites that I manage as well, all in the senior care, but those 2 are the main ones. My YouTube channel is there as well, links to that. All my social media, my podcasts are there. I think they can reach me anyway, either one of those websites. And yeah, I encourage anyone who has an interest in, is providing a service for seniors and or family caregivers to give me a call, let me know, set up a time for me with me on my Calendly schedule. There's links to that as well. And I'm more than happy to discuss it and geek out with them about it. And yeah, I love that. I would love to hear. Also, I am very big proponent of the fact that no one knows everything and that we are constantly learning. So I always welcome any feedback on how to do whatever I'm doing better. I grew up in Brooklyn, so you can't insult me, tell me anything at all. And if you feel anything, if you feel the colors of the website are not good, the information isn't good, it could be presented in a different way, please tell me. I am happy to learn from each and every person, and I make adjustments as I go along. I mean, isn't that what we all should do in life? Make adjustments as we go along to
Absolutely.
become better.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel, everything I approach everything that way. So I encourage people to call me, contact. I'm here, always here.
Very good. All right. Well, give those websites one more time.
seniorsafetyadvice.com and aginginplacedirectory.com.
Perfect. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for being here, and
Thank you.
I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Chris. You too. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.